Today is April 7th, 1975, and I'm interviewing Mr. Callor, C-A-L-L-E-R. And the first question I wanted to know is, what was your position in the United States Army during the Second World War, and how did you come to be the one of the assistants to Rabbi Hazelcorn?
I enlisted from Palestine at that time in Tel Aviv, and there was no enlisting station in Tel Aviv, so one of the officers of the mission in Tel Aviv took me to Cairo, Egypt, where I was sworn in and inoculated and given training as an Army GI.
You were an American citizen?
I was an American citizen at that time.
Now, when did you first meet the rabbi, and how did it come about?
From Cairo, we went through with the British Eighth Army, the only American unit attached to the British Eighth Army, to show them how to operate and maintain American equipment, heavy maintenance. We went up through the desert as far as Ferryville, Bizerte, and from there we made the invasion into Corsica. And when I got into Corsica, I had a feeling that I should try and find our people there. Being that I knew no Italian or French, it was very difficult for me, so finally I learned that the word Jew was Juif. And wherever I went, I asked Juif, Juif, Juif. Finally found a family there. They received me very, how should I say, graciously, if not more than that, being that I come from
right?
in Corsica, being that I'm coming from the Holy Land, Palestine at that time. And then from Corsica we made the invasion into southern France. Southern France we were supposed to have stopped in Toulon, but then some higher headquarters decided that Toulon would be a French headquarters, so we moved on to Marignan, which is a little town outside of Marseille. All through the Army career, I tried to do the best that I could as far as my duty to the Army was. Did the best that I possibly could, and on one or two occasions in Corsica, our company got commendations for the work that we did there, which was, in their opinion, very good. We were one of the fastest outfit putting in a pipeline. I was with the engineers at that time. And we also had a problem to solve for the American Air Force. The patrol boats had ovens in the rooms to warm up the pilots that were on the sea for many hours. And part of the recovery act was to keep them in a warm room for 48 hours to get them back to themselves. Now, these ovens were a special kind that were operated by a heating element plug, something like a spark plug, which necessitated the operating of a fan before you could light up the oven. Not very many knew about it, so they would turn the plug on first, which would burn out the element, and naturally the oven wouldn't light up, we no heat. One day, an Air Force colonel showed up at our base and asked if we could do anything about it, if we could possibly help him. And I said I could try, I couldn't promise. And the officer that was holding me was Lieutenant Devlin. He was a pretty nice fellow, and he asked me what I thought about it. I said, I think we could do something if you'll give me permission to contact communications. I immediately got a Jeep, and we went up into the hills to communications and got an old rheostat from them, and brought it back to the machine shops. I was in charge of the machine shops. and somehow or other we managed to get the plug in operating condition. He had 14 of them. We made 14 plugs, and they all worked out properly. And from what I heard later, the commanding officer was Lieutenant Smith, got a commendation and also made captaincy on that, just on that project. He also sent me a picture of the plaque that he had gotten to Palestine, which was Israel by the time that I had gotten.
Now, when did you get to
Marseille?
Marseille, yeah.
We didn't stop in Marseille. We stopped in Marignan, a little town outside of Marseille. That would have been right about 2 weeks after the invasion onto Red Beach in southern France. The exact date I wouldn't remember.
September 44. The invasion was August 44.
Well, I wouldn't remember when we
Yeah, all
got
right,
there,
so
but
we're
that
talking
was
about
approximate.
probably September 44.
Probably, I wouldn't...
And when did you meet the rabbi?
And the rabbi, I imagine I would have met him the following weekend, because up until now I never requested any leave, never requested any vacation. In fact, while we were in Corsica, after I'd done the job with the plug, they offered to send me for 2 weeks vacation in a rest recuperation camp in Corsica, and I said I don't need it. Didn't feel like it. I'd rather use it later on.
Fine. Did you want to say something, Rabbi?
I came to Marseille in July of 45, so there's an interval of time there. Were you in Marignan all that time, from July 44 until the spring or the summer of 45?
Definitely, I must have been there, because from Marseille, from Marignan, we went to Paris on that G2 affair. Then we came back, and then I was transferred to Chief Headquarters with Judge Rifkin, if you remember. From your section. No, I was in your section at that time.
No. After we met, a few weeks after we met, I got you assigned
to
work with me.
That's right.
So that must have been sometime toward the end of August.
I really don't know.
Okay, fine. Well, let's assume that sometime at the end of August of 1940...
You came to work for me.
45.
45.
Okay. Now, what were the type of activities that you and the rabbi were involved with?
The type of activities that I was involved in was trying to find the remnants of our people, where they were and how they were, and to try and make contacts with all sorts of bases to get food, clothing, and supplies for them. And we also set up a camp called Marignan right outside of Marseille.
On the hill. Yes.
And then Ayalad.
And then Shara the Yamit down below.
Ayalad was up in the hills. Marignan was down below.
Down below by the beach.
And then there was also a center in Bandol, if you remember.
Yeah, that's what I couldn't remember.
It was
in Bandol, that was quite a distance from Marseille, going south towards Nice.
These were all essentially hachsharot.
These were all camps where we accumulated or gathered in the few people that we could find, and as many children, naturally, as we could possibly lay our hands on.
Now, you were working in conjunction with the shlichim from Palestine.
No.
This
I was
was on your own initiative?
I was working in conjunction with Rabbi Hazelcorn, Chaplain Hazelcorn.
Okay.
I had no connections at all.
You had no connections at all, but you had the connections.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I met
right.
Shimon a couple of weeks after.
Right. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that you were working with the
shlichim.
with the shlichim. Okay. And you weren't aware of that.
I was not aware of it at that time, and I was just on my own, trying to do the best that I could.
But you were under the direction, of course, of Rabbi.
No, all these things he did on his own.
Oh, you did on your own.
No, wait a minute. A lot of things I did on my own, it's only because of Rabbi Hazelcorn. Otherwise, I couldn't have done it. Had I been back in the engineers section, I couldn't have done it.
Right. Okay.
But
fine.
being that the Rabbi Hazelcorn managed to get me transferred to his
He
section,
had carte blanche from me.
then
In other words, you didn't. Yeah, I understand.
then I could do as I thought was right, proper.
What were the type of things that you did on your own, for instance, as a Jewish GI?
As a Jewish GI, I tried to make contact with Jewish families.
In Marseille?
I found one family on the way from the Red Beach where we made our landing. Towards Toulon, we had an overnight stay in one of the small villages there. I don't remember the name. And by using the word Juif, I had found a family that had been living in the woods for a number of months, hiding. And they had relatives in New York, Brooklyn. And they asked me, could I possibly send a letter to them to let them know that they're alive, because at that time there was no postal service or anything like it. And I undertook to do that, although I was not supposed to have done, being that it was against Army regulations. And I understand that the contact was made, they wrote to them. And when I came back to the States after being dismissed, I visited the family that I'd written to, and they told me, yes, they're in contact with them, and everything is going along swell. From there, as I said, we went up towards Marignan, and then I started looking for the synagogue, naturally, to find how many people were left. I think it was on the second Friday night that I met Rabbi Hazel. First Friday night, I was still green, and I'm not the aggressive type. So I just stood around, looked around, and then I think it was Rabbi Hazelcorn that came to me, being that I was in uniform, sergeant. And we started talking, and one word led to another. I was a little bit leery about saying what, when, and where I came from, until we finally, I felt confident that I could talk openly to him. And he said, you're just the guy I'm looking for. And since then, from that time, I think he put in an application for me to be transferred to this chaplain section. And being that in my outfit, I was considered pretty fair, although before that I had an incident with an H on my dog tag. But in this outfit, I was considered a pretty fair guy. So they okayed the transfer. In fact, they might have been pleased to get rid of me, for all I know, to give somebody else a chance to get the sergeant's rating that I was carrying, staff sergeant. And I felt a little guilty about it when I came into the chaplain section, because the young fellow working with Rabbi Hazelcorn, Henry Winkheimer, was only a corporal at that time, and I felt that the rating should be given to him. I came in and took the rating away from him. I wasn't too happy about it.
He's been in touch with Henry.
Yeah.
Well, after we got together, we started trying to accumulate weapons, arms, 2 ships to Palestine at that time, besides trying to get our Jewish people together as many as possible.
Now, how are you able to provide for the Jewish survivors that you found?
That was mostly Rabbi Hazelcorn's influence, being that he was a major in the chaplaincy section, and Colonel Fay was a Catholic priest, and they worked swell together. I mean, the doors were open for us. No matter where I went, as soon as I showed the letter from the chaplain section, anything that was available, no problem, no questions asked. Besides that, we had met a number of officers, women and men, at the synagogue at services, and little by little, beg your pardon, not DPs, Jewish officers, Army officers.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Army officers,
Right.
women, nurses, and GI boys. And little by little, we started letting them know what we're trying to do. And I do believe that there wasn't one that didn't say, we're with you 100%. And in that way, we were able to create a sort of chain, a chain of links, where each and every one, wherever he was, did whatever he could for the provision of food, clothing, and whatever was necessary.
Medicines, supplies.
So in other words, you had set up this the system whereby everybody was alert.
It wasn't I that set it up.
Well,
Remember, it was Major Hazelcorn that set it up.
Right. Well, fine, but you were working as his...
I was working as one of his assistants.
Right. So you had together set up this this system whereby everybody was alert to any particular need that you had, and you could call them at the moment that you needed help.
In fact, we didn't have to call them. They called us.
Mm-hmm.
We have this and this and this and this. Where do you want to deliver to? Such was the case there. Now, any other question that I can answer? Yes.
Did you ever... I'm sorry, yes?
Yes, and remember one particular case that we had a number of young girls in the camps. I don't want to call them concentration camps.
In our camps?
Yeah, in our camps.
I call them
Hachsharot. And there was a problem. Clothing for the women, special needs for the women. And I remember particularly the response from the women.
The nurses, like girls and others.
Go ahead, you tell me.
Jewish girls were nurses.
Mm-hmm.
Who helped gather clothing, women's clothing for some of these girls that we had in Hachsharot.
It wasn't very easy for us to get the women's clothing, but the nurses, they really did a wonderful job. Wonderful job. And little by little, we got the Hachsharot going. And yes, there's one thing I'd forgotten. While I was still with the engineers, petroleum engineers, I was always asking for weekend passes, overnight passes. And the officer all of a sudden decided to find out what's going on here. Did they find a blonde or something? So I said, no, but she might have a sister. So he got his Jeep ready and got dolled up in his pinks and everything, and we went to one of the Hachsharot, which was Madrag, right near the ocean. It was an old chateau that the Germans had used, and before they left, they broke up everything, and there wasn't a pane in the building, wasn't a door on the hinges. And it was, in fact, it was used more as a stable than as a chateau, and we brought the youngsters down there, and they cleaned it up. And we came in on a Friday night, 2 candles sitting on tin cans, and they saw the meal that they were having, which was very, very meager. And I said, this is my girlfriend.
I've told him a lot of stories.
No, can you stop that thing?
Sure.
On a particular occasion, I remember we were transporting food from Marseille to Bandol, which was a camp of youngsters.
How would you spell that?
B-A-N-D-O-L.
B-A-N-D-O-L. Situated not far from Nice, on the shore. And the actual idea of the camp near the shore was to train the boys. Seawork, or whatever the word would be.
Yeah, fine.
Seamanship.
And I had quite a load of provisions on the vehicle at that time. And all of a sudden an MP stops me on the road and says, what's what? And I showed him the chaplain section slip. He said, that's not enough. Where is the shipping ticket and so on and so forth? I said, I don't know the first thing about it. I was told to take it down, and I'm taking it down. He said, well, you just wait here. And he threw his walkie-talkie, called the MP officer, lieutenant. And the lieutenant came down immediately, started questioning me, and I figured I couldn't do anything else but to open up. So I says, the best thing I could do is for me to keep quiet and take you along with me. You'll see where it's going. They all thought it was going to the black market. And I took him down to the camp, and he saw that the youngsters were there. What the situation was also an old chateau, broken down, no window panes, as the one in Marseille. And the youngsters trying to get themselves arranged somehow or other, blankets and clothing from the army. And the provisions were unloaded there. He says, is this what you're doing? I says, yes, sir. He says, okay, Sergeant, from now on, just don't worry about it. And later on I learned that he himself used to show up at least twice a week with a convoy of provisions and food, or whatever was necessary that he had picked up that was going to the black market.
Contraband.
Contraband.
See, I saw it.
Do you remember the name of? Do you remember the name of? Excuse me. Do you remember the name of the
No,
sergeant?
no, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry I don't remember the name because he was a hell of a swell guy.
Okay. This is about Patrick Fay.
Patrick Fay, yeah. I told him I'm Jewish, and you know that we haven't got very many left here in Europe. We're trying to take the remnants back to Palestine. And he said, "Si, don't worry about it." Immediately filled out a form with the chaplain's signature on it, and signed Colonel Patrick Fay in big letters so it'll be noticeable. And it said to whoever this may concern, all the help that could possibly be given would be greatly appreciated. Signed, Colonel Chaplain Fay. And that really was a door opener.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't a depot that I went to that wouldn't respond. And as Rabbi Hazelcorn says, 10% went for his orphanages, and 90% went to our people.
I didn't count the split.
Huh?
I didn't count the split that accurately.
No,
I figured that we took off half for ourselves, and the rest we divided 50-50.
The story that I remember was he told me, "Si, whatever you get, 10% is for my orphanage."
Oh, 10%.
The Catholic poor.
And that's why I respect him so much. He didn't say 50-50. He said 10% I want for my orphanages, which I think was fair considering the amount of work that we put in and the amount of people we had to feed and supply and the amount of people he had to feed and supply. Because after all, an orphanage was legalized.
Mm-hmm.
So anything they got was above their certified rations. And 10%, I think there was a pretty good haul, at least from my way of looking at it. Maybe I'm wrong. And then there's another section, another part of the story that should be mentioned here. I don't know whether Chaplain Hazelcorn mentioned it. The story about the packages coming in from the so-called Jewish Welfare Board from the United States. You got that story? Okay.
Oh, but
My wife.
yeah, but you didn't say that. I mean, it was.
No, it wasn't Jewish welfare.
It wasn't a Jewish welfare board.
Allegedly, I said.
Allegedly.
I said allegedly.
Okay, fine.
Because I don't think it would be possible for a single individual or a single group to send out the amount of equipment, the food that was sent out. It was tons. Unbelievable.
Back in the post office, they complained.
They complained. I couldn't imagine that one organization could send it out without using the Jewish Welfare Board as a cover.
We didn't.
You didn't? I'm sorry then that I said anything in
It's all right. It's all right. Fine.
disregard it. All I know is that our office was just jam-packed full of crates of all sorts of kosher food. Crates and crates and crates and no end of it.
Food and clothing.
Food and clothing and medical
No
supplies.
clothing?
Only one box of clothing.
One
There
box.
was, I remember there was
One
a box.
box of clothing, 105 boxes of food, and one box of clothing.
And there were no medical supplies?
Most of our medical supplies we got from the boys in the hospitals.
Yeah, that I remember
From
from
Blondheim and others.
the Blondheim and the others, that's right. What else can I say?
I remembered what I could.
The story about...
loading them on the boat and the tickets.
That's
That's
right.
my favorite story. It was wonderful.
When we loaded them up on the boat in Toulon.
Oh, yeah, and passing down the pass tickets. I told
Passes,
you.
yes, yeah.
You told him about
The
it?
other end, yeah.
You told him about it? Okay.
Now, what was your role in that?
He was
My-
the one who arranged it.
Now, wait a minute. You're the guy that arranged it. Don't pass on the
He
thing.
pulled out the names.
I was the one that took the list from the Army officer
Yeah.
that found it difficult
To read
to read and pronounce the Polish and the Latin and the different names.
Right.
Ski and sky and so on and so forth.
These people had certificates to go to.
So I took over the list from
You
him.
used to write the certificates?
No.
No.
These people had certificates to go to Israel.
Right.
There were 1,500 a month, which the British allocated.
Right.
All right, so when it came time for these people to board,
Right.
the American officer couldn't read the names.
Right. So you read the names.
So he got a hold of me, and I got up on a barrel there and started calling out the names. And that was my particular job then. I kept on reading names, and in between I'd slip up paper back to the front again and start reading the same name twice and 3 times. And meanwhile, they were doing what they were doing on board ship, which I had no connection with that. All I had to do was read the names. All I know is that the captain came down red-faced, like a bull, raising, holy hell, I'm supposed to have 900 and I've got 1,500 on board, and you're still reading names.
So I answered him, all I'm doing is reading the names on the list.
It was really something. And the other one was with the brigade boys that didn't recognize me with the MP.
Oh, what was this?
And Ireland, when he got 60 from Brussels.
They came down one night.
They came down one night. They came down from Belgium.
Yeah.
Do you remember when this would be?
You
The
didn't
boys
tell
that
that story?
I remember that we provided them with supplies. They needed new
Definitely.
tires and whatnot.
They needed supplies, they needed gasoline, they needed everything. Not only that, we had to provide food and clothing for the 60. All of a sudden, we got this all of a sudden, overnight, remember?
Yeah.
And I was initiated to go out and meet the convoy. An American sergeant standing out in the road and holding up a so-called British convoy. And all of a sudden, I was surrounded by umpteen officers. What's the problem? And the problem was that they thought I was an American MP. And started talking to them in Hebrew, and that got them a little bit more leery, until finally I started mentioning names that were known. And I think one of the officers, or one of the drivers in the convoy, happened to know me slightly. And by questioning me, how's your sister in Bloom? And I had answered Angie. He knew that I was right. And then he asked him, your sister in Kwagila D? So I said, I have two sisters in Kwagila D, Yetta and Bella. Yetta's gone now. And by that time they realized that I was okay, and I led them up to Ayalad, which was a camp up in the hills.
How do you spell that?
Ayelade, I think it was.
Something.
Okay, fine.
Look on the map.
All right. No, it's a...
It's a little
It's a
village.
Oh, it's a
little
village. Okay, fine.
I'd gotten hold of a chateau up there, that the Germans had used.
Wasn't the guy, the captain, the officer in charge of that brigade group, Katriel Solomon, do you remember?
Who?
Katriel Solomon
I really don't
from
remember.
Haifa?
I really don't remember.
Because when I got to Israel, I went to a party in Haifa and met him.
And then about this transmitter business.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, let's hear about that.
All of a sudden, Chaplain Rabbi Hazelcorn says, "Si, we got a problem here. We have to get a transmitter over to Greece." Theirs went on the blink, and they can't make contact with them. So I said, it's very simple. All you do is arrange for me for rest and recuperation in Tel Litvinsky.
Tell who?
Tel Litvinsky. That was in Palestine at that time. Now it's Tel Shamir. Hazelcorn managed to get the thing organized, getting me an 8-day leave. And I got on the plane, and got on the plane, I think it was in...
Right outside of Marseille, it was an airstrip.
was it in...
Kritzer went to Rome on one of those...
I think we went up to Marseille, to Paris.
To Paris first?
I think we went up to Paris to get the plane.
Which
Oh, wait a minute. No, the Army wasn't using Paris. The Army wasn't using Paris.
Didn't you get it through the Signal Corps boys in our outfit?
I really don't know how I got it. I really don't know how I got it. Anyhow, I found myself on my way from France to Greece, through Italy. In Italy, I was supposed to have picked up information from the brigade boys to take to Palestine. And here I am with this heavy valise. And my trip ticket says from Marseille to Italy, via Italy, from Italy via Egypt to Lod Airport. When I got to Italy, it was the same problem, an American sergeant speaking Hebrew, and everybody got excited, who's a spy, and so on and so forth. Finally, they put a call through to Tovio Al-Razi. He was the
top man.
Top man. It took quite a number of hours, and Al-Razi also in order to know who I am, asked me the same question. How is your sister in Kragueladi? Sister, one. I said, I have two sisters in Kragueladi, Yetta and Bella. And the one in Krablu, Angie is okay. Then he knew, he told them that the password is okay. And that's when I got all sorts of information in letter form to take along with me. The problem was for me to make a stopover in Greece, which was not on my ticket. Got down to the airfield, and by luck picked up a plane that was landing in Greece. And while on the plane, all of a sudden I developed a toothache, a so-called toothache, I and O and D, it's awful and this and painful. Anyhow, I had reason to remain in Greece overnight. Made contact with the boys, delivered the receiver, transmitter, and got some more information from them. And the following day flew into Painfield, Cairo. Being in Cairo, I had to get some more information from our organization. I came in there, it was about 10 o'clock at night in Painfield, and 11 o'clock at night I came into Cairo. And the only connection I knew at that time was through the ATSs. I used to know one of the ATS girls from Israel.
ATS?
It's the transport service.
Army Transport Service, Women Army
Women.
Transport.
Auxiliaries.
So I went to her camp and asked the girl on duty to please call Rachel, that was her name. She said, at this time of the night, crazy? She probably thought we were going to have a love affair or something. She says, no, I just came in from overseas and I'm leaving for Palestine in the morning and I must see her. Anyhow, it seems that she was convinced and she called her down. Rachel came down, surprised naturally, and I told her I needed information. She says, this time of the night? I said, I've got to have it because 6 in the morning I'm leaving. So somehow or other we got transportation from the base. We made the rounds, we got the information we needed, and 6 in the morning I took off for Israel, Palestine. Got into Bellud Airport, and naturally to come in without anything from overseas and wouldn't be quite proper. I think I had about 10 or 12 pistols in my kit bag underneath the blankets. And I showed up at the CID, that was the British Intelligence Department, and he waved me on. And I was out in the main hall, and all of a sudden I feel a slap on my back and a big yell, "Sai, where are you coming from?" in Hebrew. I thought I was going to die on the spot. That's the intelligence and everything, and now all of a sudden. So I gave the fellow a kick in the shin and started, like a Yankee soldier, would start yelling back and cursing and this and that. I guess he caught on to what was going on and left. Anyhow, I was immediately surrounded by the CID, and they asked me what happened here. I said, I don't know, some guy came up along here and started talking to me in Turkish. I didn't know what he was talking about, and he started slapping me on the back. Where is he? Where is he? I said, I don't know, he just ran out of it. Anyhow, I got out of that and landed in Telodzinski. Immediately applied for permission to go up to Kragueladi, where my parents were. And I was given that permission just to be in contact with them. That's a story about the transmitter.
And what else? Well, what about the gun running in general? Could you tell us something about that?
I remember one night in particular where I wasn't so anxious to go out on a run. I was given orders from the major to the sergeant, you do that job, and we went out and we did it. We picked up a supply that was bought from the resistance movement. From the resistance movement.
Yeah, I call it the communists.
And we picked up quite a...
He didn't want to do it.
I felt that it was too risky, being that we didn't know the people and so on and so forth. But it was quite a haul. It was quite a haul, and I was really glad that I did it.
What do you consider quite a haul? Do you remember?
All I remember was that there were about 3 cases of rifles, or maybe machine guns even. I really don't know. We didn't open them up. It was in the dark, and we loaded them up into the vehicle. And on the way back, we were stopped by a Senegalese patrol.
French patrols on the highways.
The colored soldier, and took out the chaplain's paper, and he turned it upside down this way and that way and the other way.
Read it.
Okay. But for a minute, I really thought we were at. That was a story about that. That was just one of the stories. The story that we went down to the Spanish border. No.
You went to Biarritz.
Biarritz.
We met this Rabbi Rakowski, and Rabbi was laying around.
Did you tell him that? Did you tell him that?
I don't know all the details.
No.
I told him how he knows Rakowski.
Well, all right. Rakowski ought to tell you that story. He's a boy.
That's right.
If anybody should be shot, he's one of them.
Rakowski.
Rakowski.
This is Chaplain.
Remember
Wait a minute. Is this being recorded?
Yeah.
He said, I told him he wasn't doing a damn thing. Just sitting around complaining, bellyaching about how sick he was.
Case of brand new German pistols. Brand new, still in Cosmo, the whole case full. And the first question he asked, how much?
That one I didn't know.
Jesus, did I feel like
Yeah, I told him the story about Brest. Remember?
But
I met a chaplain on my way home in Brest, I told you. I got him involved. He said he'd do some work for us, collecting. I gave him Shimon's address in Paris.
Yeah.
6 weeks later, I get a letter from Shimon. What kind of a friend did you have? He came to me with some kelim, and he wanted to be paid for them.
no, that's exactly what Rakowski wanted.
Rakowski wanted to be paid.
How many sides brought to the story?
Jesus.
Were there any other chaplains that you came into contact with?
I might have come into contact with, but not.
How would you evaluate Rabbi Kurtzer's activities?
To tell you the truth, I was with him for too short a time to really evaluate.
What period of time were you with him? How many weeks?
I don't think I was with Chaplain Kurtzer more than about 2 weeks. I really don't think so.
Did you hear anything about his activities prior to that?
Prior to that, only from his own stories about his being on the Anzio beachhead and the only chaplain there, and they really had a rough time there.
Well, what about Marseille?
I was also a little bit leery about letting people know what was on my mind about collecting of arms and ammunition, and also with the Aliyah Bet, as we call it, illegal immigration. But with Rabbi Hazelcorn, somehow it clicked overnight, and
But Morris knew about it because he writes about it in his book.
Morris definitely knew about it, but I was a little bit leery because
Getting him involved.
But was he involved with it?
he started to be involved, I think, but somehow or other it wasn't to his liking. The impression I got, this is only personal.
Right. Well, that's important.
The impression I got that he was a little bit more of a lawman than an illegal man. Let's put it that way. Army regulations are army regulations, and whatever you do outside of that is something that shouldn't be done. That's the impression I got. Whether I'm right or wrong, I don't know.
That's the impression you got from your own observations as well as other people?
No, only from my own observation, because as I said, I was with him for too short a time.
Do you recall how many times we sent Henry up to Lyon with clothing and food for the kids in the orphan asylum? I remember at least one we sent him.
Oh, I think he went up many more times than once. Much more.
We lined up a truckload of clothing and food for him.
Did you tell him the story about Yom Kippur with the... You told him that? Good job.
I don't think you told him though that he had the food rations on Yom Kippur.
Yeah, I did tell him.
Said it was Rosh Hashanah yet.
No. I think it was Yom Kippur.
It was Yom Kippur, otherwise we never got it.
1,800.
And what did the GIs do?
He didn't know anything about it. He was the one who got it and brought it straight away to our hideout.
And for that, I was called up to G2 in Paris.
Why?
They wanted to know what black market we sold it to.
Oh, they knew that it was Yom Kippur.
They knew, but still they figured that some wise guy, took advantage of it and wanted to check back on it.
So what did you tell
And
him?
I have a thinking idea, excuse the word, that it was Colonel Marcus that was killed here in Israel. Because the man that I met in Paris was Colonel Marcus.
Mickey Mark.
I have a thinking idea, and if you want the story, that's also a story.
Yes.
You mind if I lie down a minute?
Oh, sure.
Look, if there's anything I'm saying I shouldn't say, don't say.
The purpose of this is,
One of the editors
if
come on.
I told him I remember some things, and I'm sure you remember some things. You probably forgot some things that I remember, and I forgot things that you remember. Very simple.
All of a sudden we get orders. There's Rabbi Havercorn in the chaplain section gives orders for Sergeant Simon Kohler to appear before the G2 intelligence in Paris.
This must have been, in September or October 1945.
Well, it was right after Yom Kippur. Right after Yom Kippur.
Yom Kippur was October, so this must be November.
November 1945.
Yeah, I remember on an overnight train, they'd supply tickets and everything. And I took the overnight train. It was snowing that night. And in the morning we got into Paris, and I immediately started looking for chief headquarters. And I started asking for Colonel Marcus, and it seems like very few people knew until finally one sergeant showed up and said, yes, yeah, that's his door over there. I knocked and reported as a GI showed, salute and identity and so on and so forth, serial number. And he says, oh yes, Sergeant Kohler, have a seat. I sat down and said, make yourself at ease. Now tell me, what's the story about the rations that you got from us for the GIs and young people? Who did you sell it to, and what did you do with it? I figured I was there, I couldn't get out of it. There's nothing I could do about it. He had me there. The best way was to tell the truth. And I wasn't sure whether Marcus was a Jewish man or not a Jewish man. So I pulled out my door tag and I said, look, I got an H on there. H means Hebrew. That means that I'm working for my own people. We didn't sell it on the black market. We put it on ships going to Palestine with refugees. He says, it didn't go on the black market. I said, no, sir, it did not. So all the information that he had on his desk, he immediately tore it up and threw it into the wastebasket. He said, Sergeant, you see what I'm doing? Cry and stay and keep your nose clean, is what he said to me. I said, Colonel, being that we're talking as man to man and not as sergeant to colonel, I greatly appreciate, we would greatly appreciate your help, if possible. He cracked a smile and said, the best I can do is what I just did. But it wouldn't surprise me a bit if it wasn't this Mickey Marcus that was later killed in Israel.